Hey everyone, Scar for a Scar here, and joining me is Fab superstar Adam Little, fresh off his Sushi Night Road to Nationals top 8 with the main girl Levia. How you doing, Adam?
Doing good, Jordan. How about yourself?
Oh, bro, whenever there's a fresh deck tech to be made, I'm always jumping at the opportunity.
Sweet as.
So we're going to start things off here with the standard equipment that you're running. You're running the double claw levers, the new crown, the husk, and the gambler's gloves.
Yes.
And in the list, you're not actually running the skull cap at all. You're just happy to have this replaced with the crown. How was the crown for you?
It surprised me at first. I thought Skullcap would be much better because of all the aggro decks like Briar and Fire with their small on hits. Getting the additional block one would be much more important across the game. But after having used Crown of Providence in a CC setting like that, I can say that Crown has just completely replaced it. The value and consistency of Crown to be used even quite freely just to cycle your hand to keep that tempo up has saved me a lot of games.
Oh, yeah. And what were you looking to do with the crown when you were cycling? Were you just trying to get to the blood rushes a bit quicker, or is it
Uh,
situation dependent?
it is situation dependent. Mostly, well, first of all, I would say Command and Conquer is very prevalent in this meta at the moment. So it's definitely like a get out of jail free card in that sense, essentially. But furthermore, because the deck like the Fire can be a bit clunky, such as with a lot of red power cards, or needing to secure blue for the set the other in order to make sure your blood debt isn't too. You don't have to take a lot of damage just to keep your blood debt in check. Being able to cycle a card, like for example, one hand I had 3 reds and an Art of War, was be able to cycle a card from my hand into the bottom to draw blue, and I was able to enable my turn completely powerful from there on out.
Yeah, and
So
just another added bonus is compared to the skull cap, when you block with the crown, it's going to go straight to the graveyard, which kind of is relevant for Levia, right?
yeah, exactly. Like it is a great graveyard filler. Like in those niche scenarios where you just need that one more card to pop off on a full blood debt hand, it's exactly the type of card that you're fine of just like putting in, even like cycling the arsenal or just any other irrelevant yellow in your hand. And that can lead to some better turns and more consistency overall. So I think it's just a complete replacement in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, nice. We're going to start off with the reds here. So, for the Blood Debt Reds, we got triple Boneyard Marauder, triple Graveling Growl. I'm assuming this is going to be your MVP red here, the triple Dread Screamer. We
Hmm.
got triple Hungry Slaughter Beast, triple Endless Maw, which is like the big boy. And for your non-attack, for your non-blood debt attack reds, we got the triple Swing Big, triple Pulping, triple Wild Ride, and like you mentioned before, the ever so prominent triple Command and Conquer.
Definitely.
So yeah, just I want to quickly touch on CNC because I know quite a few players have been talking about CNC's dead now with the new crown and decks not caring about the Arsenal being able to play it out instant speed and cycle it. How was Command for you this weekend?
I think it did exactly as it needed to. Being able to have the option of Command and Conquer as well as a race face now allows Levia and Rhinar as well to be able to swap them out in between each other, I think, or even use both of them at the same time. Like for example, Command and Conquer isn't very good against Prism because they have the instance from their arsenal, whereas a race face stops any of their attacks from getting go again because it all depends on Illusionist. And there's just a lot of different cases, like matchup dependent, of course, but you can swap them in and out, or even use both of them at the same time. And it just gives you a lot more variety and availability to counter the specific matchups, which I think Levia was struggling a little bit beforehand, since the brute class itself has very little on hits.
Yeah, and another thing I've noticed in comparison to some other Levia builds or even just brute builds, you're not caring too much about running these two powers for the pummel because we don't actually run pummel in the main deck here. How come? How come you decided to go for this route?
I only you put but with the pummel specifically, I had one spare slot in my deck list to include a card. It's more like a last minute scenario, either like Amulet of Echoes against the prominent Fire meta, or just a cheeky pummel there in case I'm up against a control deck. And so I chose to go with the pummel since I already had enough answers for the Fires. Sadly, it wasn't very very useful overall during the weekend. But it is definitely like one of those cards you can most certainly experiment with, play about here and there, and or just keep in arsenal. And if you find out that it's not doing very much in the arsenal for a long period of time, you can just Crown of Providence it.
Because it does synchronise a bit with the old Hungry Slaughter Beast, but we move on quickly to the yellows. The yellows for Blood Debt's a bit more straightforward. It's just the free Graveling Growl and the free Mark of the Beast. And then the other yellows we're running triple Beast within triple Blood Rush Bellow and the double Art of War.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Blood Rush is the Beast within pretty standard, especially when we're running triple Wild Ride and the other one Pulping.
3 pulpings.
Yeah. So it's easy to get the Beast within triggers. And the Art of War is just because you're an aggro deck, you're just wanting to push out as much damage as you can. You often times using this to give Go Again.
Yeah, typically Art of War, depending on the matchup or which cards I have in my hand, it's normally for Go Again. Just because that's the safest option, being able to like banish a card, draw 2 cards, and play 2 Graveling Growls in a turn out of a single blue is fantastic if you ever get that opportunity. But other than that, being able to give stuff like Command and Conquer or Race Face Go Again, then play a second one has always been very powerful. I myself am quite reserved. I don't roll Scavskins very often, or sometimes not even at all in a game, if I can help
it. You call
it.
yourself a brute, man.
Yep. Those double ones are still scaring me, man. Yeah, like I'm a bit more of a reserved brute player myself, so I prefer to just get the security of Go Again. But if I have something like a Wild Ride or Pulping or a Dread Screamer in arsenal, or even in hand, then I'm more than happy to just say +1/+1 in order to get that maximum value.
Yeah, the Art of War also synergizes pretty nice with Levia's on-hero ability of turning off Blood Debt when something gets banished.
Exactly, and that's the main reason why I choose Art of War over the likes of Shadow Puppetry. Sure, Shadow Puppetry does give the +1 and the Go Again on your next attack, but it's not always guaranteed to prevent the Blood Debt, which is very, very important in the mid to late game. So I prefer Art of War. Plus, it also pitches for yellow, which can help with a Blood Rush turn of the Claws, for example. And I say those are the best reasons, in my opinion. As well as a couple oddball niche tricks you can do, such as if you attack with a Command and Conquer and they block for 6, you can just play it for +1/+1 like an overpriced lunging press. And there's nothing wrong with that, since you're just forcing a card for a card overall.
Alright, we'll move on to the blues here. When I was going through the deck list, this is what interested me the most. So with the blues, we've got triple Dread Screamer, triple Endless Maw, triple Deadwood Rumbler. We have the 1 legendary Soul Harvest, triple Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell, the old Welcome to Rave classic triple Wrecker Romp, the 2-off Reckless Swing, and the 1 Eye of Ophidia. Talk to us about this Eye real quick.
Alright, so the Eye of Ophidia specifically is for likes of Pulpings, Blood Rush, as well as Beast Within and Wild Ride synergies. Being able to draw and discard a card is very beneficial, and even though that this deck is very consistent in being able to do that, it does have the oddball risk to it, which with the likes of Wild Ride can just end your turn completely without sorting the Blood Debt issue. And that is a no-go, especially with aggro decks around a fair bit in these early weeks at least. So I particularly use it as just a good blue overall. There's not really any other blues I can think of that would be to fill its placement role specifically. Like, you can always use a simple blue block 3 that's able to keep yourself consistent, like an Unworldly Bellow blue. Nothing wrong with those ones, but in my opinion the Opt 2 it just increases their consistency even further, which is what you need for a deck that has a self-tax such as Blood Debt.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm very interested in the Convulsions. What does it say? Convulsions? Yeah. So basically this is just another card that's going to be able to help banish stuff from your graveyard. And the additional effect's not too bad. You get a +1 and Dominate to any attack action. It doesn't even have to be a brute card. So it works well with the CNC as Erase Faces.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it gives them Dominate, pushes them to 7 while still keeping your Blood Debt in check. And in worst case scenario, it's a blue block 3, and even then, like, being able to do a couple of them late game is not the end of the world either. So it's just like the best card that I found to suit that late game scenario where you're just trying to push through damage, but they keep blocking with cards from hand. And we're now on just like 1 to 2 to 3 HP, and if you can't get that Reckless Swing quickly enough, then that is the next best thing in my opinion.
Yeah. Also, with the 2 Reckless Swings, you felt the need to still include them in the deck. It's just the versatility of the card too good to pass up, even when you're trying to be this aggressive deck.
I believe so. Like, it is very bad if you do draw one of them too early or 2 of them in the same hand. However, just as a mentioned above with Crown, that fixes the issues that presents. Being able to just cycle one of them, one of those awkward hands that would otherwise cause you a lot of damage, can actually make your hand completely fine, or even better depending on what you draw with them. But being able to secure two of them for those late game swings out and just smack them for that last two damage, or etc., can actually save you a lot of lifetime scenarios. And for example, you're forced on the back end, you're forced to block out, or you put them all the way down to two, even without their equipments. If you're just stuck there taking a lot of damage, you can't just keep on taking it and taking it, whilst only doing vanilla attacks back. Sometimes you need that last little pinch of damage in order to secure that win.
Yeah, it's always got scary going to around 2 life against any bro, especially if you see them pitching the reckless swing early, which a lot of brutes do, just because it's such a good blue to pitch early game.
Exactly.
So moving on to the sideboard here, so we've got free equipment here. We've got the Null Rune Robe, the Skull Horn, which is your Arcane Barrier. You got the one Goliath Gauntlet. And we have double Howl from Beyond, the one Deep Rooted Evil, the triple Erase Face that we've touched base on a little bit before, three Unwieldy Bellow, the one Doomsday, and the one Yellow Pummel. So what are each of these cards for? Which matchups are these for?
Alright, so Erase Face we've already covered. These are dependent with and for Command and Conquer. The Skull Hod and Null and Robe are pretty self-explanatory. They're just for the two wizards of Kano and Icelander. You don't obviously need the Karen Husk, because in fact that's actually bad against wizards in a lot of scenarios, unless you're blocking out that one Nourishing Emptiness, which is far too niche in my opinion. So being able to just have the Skull Hod and Null and Robe as the Arcane Barrier 3, you don't need any more than that typically. The Howl from Beyonds and the Deep-Rooted Evil go together typically against control decks. Being able to play two Howl from Beyonds, getting two cards in the graveyard, and then play a banishing card like Hungering Slaughter Beast or Endless Maw, banishes those two and their attack you previously played, puts them both back into the banish zone, as well as being able to play the big attack. Then that attack you've just played goes into the graveyard, play two Howls, and it's just like a cycle where it keeps on doing like 12, 15 damage. Well, the opponents just have to do nothing but chip, and then eventually is able to squeeze that kill, or keep yourself consistent enough to the point where you find a turn like a Dread Screamer, for example, and you can just go wide enough to be able to finish them off with awkward power turns.
Yeah, nice. The Unwieldy Bellows is a card that I think a lot of early Levia builds, in the very early days, I saw this card as maybe like a 9-off staple in the main deck.
Yeah, it was definitely a card that, I mean, by itself it is very powerful. One cost, banishing, as well as being able to give something +4 is definitely worth its money in my opinion. However, the more and more we tried it out, like even blues are good for Levia builds. There's nothing wrong with the blues either. But we found out it wasn't as necessary as needed because, again, there's no real on hits. Plus, it doesn't help Commander Conquer and whatnot. If it said next attack in general, then it'll be way stronger. Probably a bit too strong in my opinion. But using just the reds in this scenario is good against the control decks, or even some of the aggro decks where you can't afford to allow them to give on hits. Like Lexi, for example, Wild Riders and Pulvery is actually quite bad because you need to be able to block out until they have a smaller turn. Being able to have a Unwieldy Bellow to just make your big swing attack for 12 for one single additional card is much more damage value in my opinion.
Yeah, and with the one Goliath Gauntlet, when are you swapping that within the Gambler's Gloves? Because you're talking about that you don't really like rolling the Scab Skins too often. Is there a reason they don't just play the Goliath Gauntlet in the main?
Goliath Gauntlet is typically a side card overall just because Gambler's Gloves enables, in my opinion, maximum use of Scabskin Leathers. You can always look at Scabskin Leathers as a potential play without feeling too much pressure into using it, in my opinion. As long as you've got that one Gambler's Gloves, it's relatively always safe to use it, unless it's that 1/36 chance of double ones, which sadly does happen.
It does happen, right?
It does happen. It happened to me in my top 8 match, but it is what it is. That's the risk you take with it.
Alright, nice.
But I would say that I use Goliath Gauntlet against aggro matchups where you need that relevant on hit, specifically with Command and Conquer and Erase Faces. So against the likes of Lexi, where you need to turn off their fuses, or against Fi with trying to pick apart that Tome or Art of War in their arsenal. Just being able to do your best to keep opportunities open for yourself in order to come back at them with more damage turns instead of being on the receiving end of them all the time.
Alright, nice. After your weekend and the success you had, was there anything that you would change about the list going forward? Or are you happy with how it is?
I'm quite happy with how it is at the moment. I would probably change a couple yellow graveling growls to maybe yellow hungering slaughter beasts, just because getting a couple of them in hand has been a bit awkward. However, they do still function very nicely with Art of Wars, as well as the 6 Dread Screamers that we use, and even Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell in the late game. So they're not bad cards overall, but in my opinion, I'd say maybe just swap 1 or 2 of them out for Hungering Slaughter Beasts and keep the red ones in there. Just to give yourself a little extra consistency with keeping yourself up floating.
Alright, cool. And if there was one piece of advice that you would like to give to anyone who's maybe thinking about picking up Levia and giving her a spin, what would you offer to them?
My biggest piece of advice for this deck is that it seems very easy with just being able to play 6 powers or not, but it is very taxing and a very patient deck to learn. So you do have to be very resource management, and you do have to maneuver between big burst turns and just a simple Boneyard Marauder turn, for example. The biggest piece of advice is restraint on Scabskin Leathers. It is not a deck that you can just spam the dice and be consistently winning with it, I would say.
But what if I want to roll to attack with the claw twice?
You can do that, that is not bad. If it does come to the wire of do or die time, then yes, I would say use the Scabskin Leathers if there's no other way. But if you have for example, a hand with an Endless Maw, a blue, and a yellow Graveling Growl in hand, instead of rolling it for Scabskin Leathers just to try to get an extra claw attack in during the mid game when you're both on 20 life, I'd say it's not really worth it. It's better to just attack with the Endless Maw than Arsenal with the other card, just to not run that risk. Because in late game, where it does become that do or die time with a Boneyard Maw and Graveling Growl in hand, for example, then that's when you definitely need the Gambler's Gloves to secure yourself with that.
Alright, well, thank you for your time, man. It's been awesome catching up and going over the deck with you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Alright, cheers, man. Till next time.
See you next time.